They say the life of a lighthouse keeper is boring. It's just you, the ocean, and a 1,000,000-watt bulb. I did the job for 15 years at Beacon Rock. It's a needle of stone sticking out of the Atlantic, 12 miles from the nearest human being. The lantern room is 120 feet in the air. At that height, you are untouchable. You are a god looking down on the chaos. But on the night of the great gale of '99, I learned that the light doesn't just warn ships away. Sometimes it calls things in. It was 2 a.m. The storm was a monster, a nor'easter. The wind was clocking 80 miles per hour. The waves were smashing halfway up the tower. I was in the watch room, the level just below the light. I was drinking coffee, listening to the gears turn overhead. The heavy brass clockwork mechanism was spinning the massive Frenzel lens. Whir, click, whir, click. It was hypnotic. Then I heard it. It cut through the roar of the wind. I froze. It sounded like someone knocking on a window. I shook my head. Hail, I thought, or a confused seagull slamming into the glass. It happens during storms. Birds get disoriented by the beam and break their necks. I went back to my logbook. Tap, tap, tap. Louder this time and rhythmic. 1, 2, 3. Impossible, I muttered. I was 120 feet up. The tower is a sheer vertical drop into boiling white water. There is no balcony on the watch level. I stood up and climbed the short iron ladder into the lantern room. The light was blinding. The beams swung around, cutting a cone through the rain. I shielded my eyes and looked at the glass panels. I expected to see a smear of blood or feathers. Instead, on the northeast pane, I saw condensation. Something was pressing against the outside of the glass. I walked closer, fighting the glare. It was a hand. It was pressed flat against the storm glass, but it wasn't a human hand. It was pale, dead fish belly white. The fingers were impossibly long, with too many joints, and between the fingers there was thick, translucent webbing. I stumbled back, gripping the railing of the lens assembly. "To hell with the ships!" I yelled. I ran to the breaker panel on the wall. I grabbed the heavy iron lever for the main lamp. I pulled it. Darkness.
Absolute crushing darkness. The only light was the occasional flash of lightning outside. I stood there in the dark, holding a heavy wrench, waiting. The tapping stopped. I held my breath. I heard the wind. I heard the rain. Then I heard a sound that made my blood freeze. It was moving across the glass. I waited for the glass to shatter, but the sound moved up toward the copper roof of the dome. Then silence. I waited in the dark for 6 hours. I sat in the corner, clutching that wrench until the sun came up. When the gray light of dawn filled the room, I stood up. I looked at the window. The crack was there. The scratch marks were there. I walked out onto the narrow maintenance catwalk that circles the lantern room. I looked over the railing, down the side of the tower. The white paint of the tower was scarred. Deep gouges ran from the waterline all the way up to the top. Slime trailed down the stone, drying in the wind. But it wasn't just one trail. I walked around the catwalk to the south side. More scratches. I walked to the west side. More scratches. I looked down at the ocean. The storm had passed. The water was calm. But about 50 yards out, I saw them. Heads bobbing in the water. Dozens of them. Pale, bald, black-eyed heads. They were watching the tower, waiting. They hadn't left. They were just waiting for the light to turn back on. Waiting for the light to turn back on. I realized then that I wasn't a keeper. I was a feeder. Every night I turned that light on, I was ringing a dinner bell for things that live in the crushing dark. I didn't turn the light on that night. A cargo ship ran aground on the rocks 2 miles south. No survivors. The investigation board fired me. They said I was negligent. They said I fell asleep. I didn't fight them. I let them fire me. I packed my bags and I moved to Nebraska, the middle of the continent, the furthest point from the ocean I could find. But sometimes, when I'm driving at night on a lonely cornfield road, I see the high beams of a truck in my rearview mirror, and for a split second, the light looks like it's coming from a prism, and I get the urge to smash the mirror, because I know they are still out there. And now that they know where the light comes from, I wonder if they've learned how to climb other things.